Okay, right, that's better. Okay, so just any comments or feedback on how coursework 1, the source evaluation and synthesized summary, had gone, and whether or not you had any views on whether or not it would be appropriate to make the synthesized summary a kind of class-based assessment rather than letting students submit from home, or whether you thought that was preferable?
I think so.
Go ahead. Yeah, sorry. I like it. We've only got one group who've done it so far, and they're a fairly strong group, so maybe it's a slightly skewed judgment, but they seem to have got on board with the fact that it's more structured than it was in the past.
Right.
So there seems to be more scaffolding, which perhaps wasn't there in the past, or maybe we just weren't doing it effectively. But no, it seems to have worked well, and the work that we've seen so far has been of quite a good standard, even for the weaker students in the stronger group. So I think it's worked well. About making the synthesized summary a class-based exercise. What's the reasoning behind that?
Well, partly it was because some tutors had kind of reported that students hadn't really done enough reading to be able to do the synthesized summary effectively, and there was also the possibility that they could actually get somebody else to write it for them, whereas if they were actually being given, short texts in class to do a synthesized summary, they were effectively practicing and demonstrating the skill. But I just,
just become an exam?
Well, exactly. It just becomes another sort of piece of coursework, which is just a kind of micro skill that they then need to demonstrate. I suppose the only advantage of making it a formalised assessment is that then it becomes something that they focus on and they recognise as being really important. But as you said, the aim was really for them to be able to use the reading they'd done and then effectively use that in either that exact paragraph or something similar in their essay, so that you're not kind of duplicating. That was the aim. It's just whether in reality sort of student motivation is not quite,
Yeah, I mean, as I say, with the group that I've taught, and again, I realise it's only a small cohort, but there weren't any problems with motivation. I imagine there will be with weaker students. But, getting somebody else to write for them, well, does he not go through turning it anyway? So probably spot collusion anyway. I just think the whole idea of
collusion,
Yeah, it doesn't spot collusion. It just is if
of course not. Okay.
I mean, we just finished doing this particular coursework, and I've got results, and we're now marking resubmissions. And we had no problem with motivation. We had some problem with performance, but it was basically from the students who are generally weaker. I just can't really see, to be honest, I can't really see the point of doing it as an exam or as a class-based exercise, mostly because it wouldn't be quite authentic, if you know what I mean. I mean, how many of us do it in timed conditions? We usually, when we're writing essays, we kind of take our time. And obviously there will always be a risk of some academic misconduct, but we know our students, we can then basically do a back revision.
I think at some point you've got to accept that if we're giving them coursework, then we do run the risk of there being some academic misconduct, but it's kind of up to us to know the students well enough to be able to spot that. So
I think
also accept that you're maybe not going to spot every single instance of academic misconduct all the time. So
I suppose one advantage. I think part of the reasoning for this was that we thought that if a student was likely to get, get another student to help them or whatever, then at least they would be caught early, rather than, getting to the extended research essay and then handing that in and going, oh, right, you clearly haven't written this. So
what we're doing is having like the short texts in class version as a formative practice earlier on, which is just formative, but then at least we've got a sample of their actual work which we can use as a reference.
Yeah, we also do tutorials after coursework was submitted and returned to students, so between coursework 1 and coursework 2. So students basically talk to us about their outline, about their plan for coursework 2, and then it is very easy to spot during this conversation with a student whether they have had any help.
Good. Okay, great. Well, let's kind of park that for now then. But another thing Samantha had actually raised was she had, but I've looked at her results and I find this quite surprising. She said that her tutors had strongly felt that they needed, that it would be better for students to have 2 hours for the reading and writing paper rather than an hour and a half. Which I've gone back. It's a shame Samantha's not, I don't know if she's teaching or what, but when you look at the amount they have to read for IELTS in an hour and the amount they have to read for first certificates, then they're reading less and they've got fewer, the task types obviously are different, which has its own challenge, but I think if we were to increase the length of the exam, apart from the logistical nightmare that might cause some centres and possible fatigue of students, surely most students would get, I mean, if you had an hour to read, 1,600 words, you should be able to kind of, I think part of the thing we're trying to test is their ability, one of the learning outcomes is that they can adapt their reading strategy for the situation, and we're not really testing that if you give them sufficient time for them to read word for word. That's kind of what we're trying to get away from, I guess. So any thoughts on that? Does anyone strongly disagree and think we should be giving longer?
No.
No.
Most of our teachers said the same thing. They thought it was not enough time, but we've just done it, so we haven't got the marks in. We'll see if the
Okay,
marks
so we
prove
can,
that.
right, and we can see, because the 45 minutes and then 45 minutes for the essay, that kind of, the essay timing is the same as the 40 minutes, 250 words for an IELTS. So I think, maybe perhaps wrongly, but the assumption was that was quite, most students would be used to that kind of, writing in that length of time. So,
yeah, and they should be able to read both texts and understand the gist of it in that time. And you're right, if we give them time to read it word for word, then it defeats the purpose.
Yeah, we don't. Yeah, exactly. You don't want them starting a master's thinking that you should take 2 hours to read 1,500 words. You'll be a bit stuck if they do that. Okay, right, let's move on then. So the next thing was the AES teaching materials, and there are a couple of kind of points about this. Firstly was a point Simon wanted to make, I think, because he's been putting together the materials which I've then been uploading, which some, not all, but some centres have also been using. And it's a bit of a struggle for one person to be trying to do all of this, to be honest, and we are kind of drawing from the Sheffield material, and we don't have all of that stuff, so we are having to kind of...
We've just stopped doing that, actually, and just taking it from the textbooks we've got in centre, because we didn't have all the audios and stuff, so we'll just be basically copying units from books.
Bits and pieces, so we need to kind of have a strategy moving forward for that. One possible thing was that I had a visit from the guy from Cengage who do the Delta writing, the Delta Academic Objective Skills series, sorry. And he has put me in touch with the author, and they have said that they could, in theory, put together one book for us, drawing from the writing skills, the reading skills, and the listening and note-taking book. Because I said to them, well, the reason we don't use that now is because coursebooks don't tend to kind of follow the order that we would like to kind of have a basic introduction to lots of areas. And what happens is you end up doing, part of a unit from something and then part of and it just becomes really disjointed. But I've put that to Paul, and obviously I have to go through, I don't know how many committees, but in theory I can investigate that. But obviously that would be, the student would then need to buy a book, and it would have kind of the parts or bits of the units in the order that we wanted, and then we could supplement. I kind of think that might be a good idea, because then they would have one, a professionally produced book in the order that we wanted loosely, and we could supplement it, and then teachers would have all the material right from the off. There'd be no photocopying, or much less.
I think, from our perspective at Marangoni, I think that would be really, really helpful to have one text that we could go to as a sort of an AES course book, And as long as, I guess, the activities were sort of aligned with a definitive order of assessments potentially, or something like that. Yeah, but I would yeah, definitely support that.
Okay, that's good. Well, I will I'll follow up on that. I emailed Paul, and he said obviously it would need to be costed, and if it was going to be like £40 a book, then we might end up with a problem. But I can't, they're very keen to kind of, make as much money from producing books as they can. So, and for them to just, put together the materials they've got in a different order, I can't imagine that's a particularly difficult thing, especially if I have to go through and specify what we need where. Oh, that wasn't me. It's someone's rape alarm. That sounded like. Okay, I'll investigate that then and get back to people on that one. So the next point was the Heads of English Study Smart site has now got a calendar. So I'm just going to drag it over so you can see. And it would be really useful if people could just put in what their exam weeks were and what paper was going to be used, if you can see that. So, oops, you can see the calendar. So, if all you need to do is click on the month and then do new event, and I think you leave it as course, leave it as course and then put whatever, Lincoln AS. You're writing, okay, and then just say which paper you're using, paper 3, whatever, and stick it in, and that will be really, hopefully that's it, and then it will come up, and I can just see when people are using, make sure that people aren't sort of a double check that people aren't using, listening 7 or giving it out to students. Not giving it out, just giving the transcript out. But just so I can keep track, and also so when we look at the results, if people can just make sure they put sorry, let me just show you on where that is. There it is, data reporting. Yes, so everyone has been, which is really helpful just to see when it's been delivered. So, because if people are using things for resits or whatever, it's good to know that it's being used for that purpose. So you would obviously expect the students not to be as strong, and it's not necessarily an issue with that particular paper, but it's just useful to have that information, whether it's being used as a summative or a resit, or exam 4 or exam 6 or whatever it's being used for, so we kind of can track if anything. Obviously, if we suddenly get results that are way above or below what they generally have been. But yeah, I was just looking, so the reading for you see paper 1, they didn't. Yeah, I mean, they got a mean of 54. They haven't used the other one yet. I'm just wondering if they did have an issue with timing, and they thought that students had performed weaker than they should have. But I mean, we'll try and do some anchor testing here as well, and I will speak to David. Maybe you could do one at Keele as well if you've got a smaller cohort and they're easier to manage. We just need a sample so that we can just check that if they do a first certificate, if they do a first certificate reading or a Trinity reading that's B2 level and do our reading, and just check that the marks are similar, in terms of, so that we can check we're not. Oh, that's not me. That would be great. So if you could add your exam dates to that calendar, that would be really useful, and then we can just make sure, and then it will be clear for you as well whether you should be using the pre-listening task 1 or task 2 or task 3, if people have already used up the paper before you or not. So resits, I think, Kieran, we did kind of discuss that briefly in the last meeting, that all of the summative assessments should have a resit opportunity. And when you deliver them, it is entirely up to you and your own, the logistics of it, whether or not there might be some stipulation from your university that they can only be done at the end of the course or the end of the module, which I think is the case for some, or whether you can do it as soon as possible, which obviously would make things a lot easier. So I think that was just her query, but I think we did mention that before. Speaking marking, so I've added, you know, for each band we have 3 possible marks. So for those ones, the band that is now wider, I've added, I've added what the marks, there are 3 possible marks, so it's either like 8, 10 or 12 or 8, 10 or something like that. So I've put it on and I'll update it on the teacher handbooks, but just so that if tutors ask, there are still only 3 possible marks, because then you're looking at obviously a bigger band, but it's 40%, 50% or 60% basically. So I've updated that. And the last bit was, everybody's clear on which well, as of next week, I will, once I think Lancaster have used the listening 7, I will turn that into a mock so people can actually use that and go through it in class. Because, it can't be used summatively anymore, unfortunately. So, if anyone does, I mean, although obviously it is a significant amount of hassle when this does happen, obviously it's please don't feel like you can't say that something's happened and exam result, answer keys have been leaked or anything like that. Because better to deal with it than find it's on some student's phone somewhere. That was all that was on the agenda. Any questions or comments? Anybody had anything they needed to discuss at this point? No.
Yes, I do have a question.
Okay, good.
Here in Kingston, our international one runs much faster. It's a 2-term program. So we are about to start marking the essays now. And the question is, how much annotation do we have to do on the essay? So do we have to annotate the entire essay, just part of it?
No,
no
I think,
annotation at all?
no, it says in the handbook, let me have a look, I think it says the first 10% or, let me just have a look, sorry, I've lost my thing with having so many pin screens. Right, okay. So it does say in the bit about marking guidelines.
The teacher's handbook.
Yes. So if I just have a look, it will tell you. I think because if it's marked on on grade mark, then you need to, obviously those the quick marks have been added, but you can amend those as the teacher sees fit. But you have the marking criteria to attach for pre-masters, IY1 and foundation. But I think the kind of agreement, unless there is any particular rule for Kingston. Sorry. Hang on. There. Okay. So the first 20% general comments thereafter. So if they've so it's either kind of if it's foundation, then I guess it would be the first 100 words ish.
Okay.
And then after that it's just general comments. Because obviously if they need to just the first so it's first 20%. Or a 20%, it could be a main body paragraph. It doesn't necessarily need to be. And then, because obviously otherwise if they need to resubmit, then you've basically rewritten it for them if you do more than that. Okay, any other questions or comments?
No.
Sorry, can I just ask one question regarding the handbook you just showed?
Yeah.
So there's this little note there saying that any work that doesn't meet past standards should be double marked.
Yes.
So has that changed following Paul's guidelines regarding moderation?
No, that's the same. So it needs to be, when we say it does double marked, it might be, I mean, in terms of like the listening and reading exam, it's basically to check somebody's not miscounted or missed a page or something, really, because if somebody has clearly failed, then there's not much you can do. But the regulations sort of say that we should double mark everyone that's failed, or at least have a second person look at it.
Yeah, that's kind of this is kind of where I'm confused. So because we always double marked 20% plus all fails, and now we were told that instead of double marking, we should basically be moderating to ensure that the marking criteria have been
applied. Yes.
Yeah.
Right. So this is the updated one that's now on the Heads of English site. So so we have the. Okay, all fails and a systematic sample. So it hasn't, because in some centres they say 20%, but in other places that we do a sample of each tutor's scripts at high, middle and low. So you may have, as long as it's a systematic approach and you're not doing 5 of one tutor's and 1 of another and nothing of somebody else's, but it needs to be at each pathway so that you're checking that pre-masters, rather than per tutor if they're marking across different programs. That was something that was kind of brought up at the meeting recently. And then the reporting bit, and then we will have the kind of the standardization thing, or moderation I should say, meeting where we'll just review each other's and check that everyone, it's been applied appropriately. But for in-centre, you should, mark or double mark or review at least every fail, and then a sample of the scripts at kind of high, middle and low, past standard and good past standard, so that you can check somebody's not marking way too high or low.
I was just basically confused about the terminology used between double marking and moderation here.
I will amend the handbook so that it says moderate. Yes, so I think that's the preferred term.
Okay, lovely. That's basically what I was curious about.
I almost wanted to say double checked, really, but I don't think that's allowed. So I will make sure I amend that.
Thank you.
Okay. So I'll put I'll reword that so that it's more in line with the other language used. Okay, good. Anything else?
No.
No. Okay, I will send round the doodle poll after this meeting, so we can kind of plot in. Well, actually, if people could put in their when the exams are being run, and then I can make sure that everybody will have at least, have a sample to bring, because as we discussed at the meeting before, we don't want to wait until all the coursework has been done and then moderate that, because the turnaround is too quick. So long as people have got an example of some marking for each of the skills, then that I think should be sufficient, and we need to do it as quickly as possible, really. Okay. Brilliant. Okay,
Great.
Thanks very much, everyone. Anything else, just stick it on the thing, and so we should be doing another 2 weeks, shouldn't we? We'll do another standardisation, so we'll have a look at if Henrique, if you've got people who've done coursework too, if you wouldn't mind sending me 3 samples, and then we can use that to do moderation standardisation. I'm getting my terms all mixed up. To do standardisation using a coursework 2 sample.
By coursework 2, we slightly different. What do you mean?
Because you said you've got students who've submitted coursework 2 already.
Yes.
And we're going to do a standardisation session for coursework 2 in 2 weeks, and I don't know that other centres will actually have had any submissions by then. So if you could send me 3 samples of your student submission, and then we'll use those samples to do the standardisation.
Okay.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye.
Thanks a lot.
Cheers. Thanks, Rick. Cheers. Bye.
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 Vic, you still there? Hello?
John Vic. Someone was saying hello.